I always notice the same thing the moment I walk into a room. Everyone has a drink in their hand except me. Beer bottles on the counter, wine glasses clinking, people already relaxed and loud. And there I am holding a water bottle, or sometimes nothing. The second someone asks, "You're not drinking?" and I say no, everything shifts just a little. A short silence, a quick stare. It's small, but real. And if you've ever been the only sober one in the room, you know exactly what I mean. People assume I don't drink because I'm disciplined, or being healthy, or trying to be different. But the truth is much simpler. I'm tired. I used to drink to calm myself down, to feel normal in loud rooms, to avoid feeling awkward. And it worked. Until later I learned that researchers at the University of Washington found something called rebound sensitivity. People who once used alcohol to cope actually feel more stress when pressured to drink again. That study explained what my body already knew. The funny thing is, no one ever asks why someone does drink. But the moment you don't, suddenly it's a topic. And I eventually realized that my choice wasn't threatening, it was revealing. It made people look at their own habits, their own reasons, their own late-night thoughts. Like Carl Jung said, what we dislike in others is often something we're avoiding in ourselves. So when I say, I don't drink, I'm not making a statement. I'm just choosing what feels honest, what feels like me. And if hearing this stirs something inside you, even a small shift, it might be because my story sounds a little like yours. Because this isn't really about alcohol. It's about finally choosing the version of yourself you've been trying to grow into. There was this ordinary moment, nothing heavy, nothing dramatic, when I walked into a room full of people holding drinks and laughing, while I stood there with just a bottle of water. Someone offered me a drink and I said, "No, I'm okay." Immediately the mood shifted a little. A short silence. A confused smile. A joking, "Come on, just one." And even though no one said it directly, I could feel their eyes asking the question, "Why aren't you drinking?" That tiny moment made me realize something I hadn't wanted to admit before. Sometimes the smallest choices expose the biggest truths. At first I wondered if something was wrong with me, maybe I was being difficult, maybe I didn't know how to fit in. But the longer I paid attention, the more obvious it became. The discomfort around my no wasn't really mine. It belonged to everyone else. Later I learned about a study from the University of Houston that explained this clearly. They call it the social permission loop. When everyone drinks, it feels normal. But when even one person doesn't, the loop breaks and suddenly people are forced to see their own habits in a way they usually avoid. Without meaning to, I became a mirror. And maybe that's the part many of us don't talk about. When I stopped drinking, people around me didn't just react to my choice, they reacted to their own doubts, their own memories, their own private reasons for drinking. Some started explaining themselves, even when I'd asked nothing. "It relaxes me. It's just social. I barely drink anyway." I could see in their eyes the same things I used to feel. The stress we try to numb, the anxiety we try to hide, the loneliness we don't want to face. My choice touched something raw, not just in them, but in me too. Without alcohol, I started seeing my real feelings more clearly. Not always comfortably, but honestly. I noticed who made me feel safe and who drained me. I noticed when I was present and when I was pretending. Without the blur of drinking, every emotion sat closer to the surface. And if you've been through this too, you know that clarity can feel both freeing and frightening. It forces you to face the things you used to drink to avoid. There were moments I felt out of place, even embarrassed, standing there with a soda while everyone else toasted. But over time, I realized something healing. Choosing not to drink isn't a rejection of anyone else. It's a decision to take care of myself. And the people who truly care about me don't feel threatened by that. Some even whispered later, honestly, I've been thinking about cutting back too. That's when I understood. Sometimes our courage gives other people permission to be honest too. The more I talked to people who didn't drink, the more I realized something I didn't expect. Their stories sounded like mine. Different backgrounds, different lives, but the same turning points. Some stopped after burning out, some after a health scare, some after growing up around addiction. Others simply woke up one day and realized that alcohol never actually added anything real to their lives. And in those conversations, something shifted for me. It stopped being my story. It became our story. A pattern so many of us lived without ever comparing notes. And if there's one thing I want us to hold on to, it's this. Choosing not to drink doesn't make you the odd one out. It doesn't make you boring or uptight. It makes you aware. It means you're finally listening to your mind when it gets overwhelmed, to your body when it's tired, to your past when it whispers, "We're not going back there." Not drinking isn't about perfection. It's about honesty. It's about choosing clarity over habit, peace over pressure, yourself over expectations. And maybe, if you feel that tiny tug in your chest right now, your quiet "no thanks" is really a yes to a life that finally feels like your own. The longer I stayed sober, the more I noticed something that felt uncomfortably familiar. Every time I said, "I'm not drinking," the room got a little quieter. Not dramatically, just a tiny shift, like when someone turns down the volume without warning. And I realized a lot of us have been in that exact moment, standing there with a soda in our hand, wondering why a simple choice suddenly feels like a spotlight we never asked for. What surprised me most was how quickly people reacted. A raised eyebrow, a joke, a curious "why not?" That didn't sound all that curious. And when I paid attention, I could feel a small knot inside my chest, the same knot many of us have felt, the one that whispers, "Please don't make this weird. Please don't make me explain." It wasn't about alcohol. It was about wanting to belong without having to justify ourselves. Later, I came across a study from the University of Bath that made everything click. Researchers found that people often pressure others to drink because it makes them feel better about their own drinking. That hit me hard. Not because it shocked me, but because it suddenly made sense. My no wasn't the problem. It was the mirror it held up. And once I understood that, a lot of the awkwardness started to feel less personal. Still, if I'm honest, the hardest part wasn't dealing with other people, it was dealing with myself. I used to worry that my refusal would make me look boring or uptight or like someone with a story I didn't want to share. I think many of us know that feeling. We don't want judgment, we don't want questions, and sometimes we're not even sure how confident we are in our own choice yet. So when someone reacts strangely, it pokes at a soft spot we already feel inside. But something interesting happened over time. The people who joked or pushed usually drifted away. Meanwhile, the people who quietly understood or who were struggling themselves moved closer. They'd lean in and say, "Honestly, I've been thinking about cutting back too," or "I wish I could say no that easily." And in those conversations, I understood something important. Saying no doesn't isolate us. It helps us find the people who actually respect us. What surprised me most was realizing that choosing not to drink wasn't changing who I was. It was simply removing a layer that had been covering me for years. I wasn't becoming a different person. I was becoming a clearer version of myself. The version that didn't need to use alcohol to relax, fit in, or feel okay in a room full of people. And if any of this sounds like your experience too, then maybe you've already learned what I did. This isn't about being better than anyone. It's about finally paying attention to what we need instead of what everyone expects. It's about taking back small pieces of ourselves we didn't even know we were giving away. There comes a time when you stop blaming taste, health, or I'm driving for why you don't drink, and you finally look deeper into yourself. And that moment, whether it happens slowly over years or all at once in a single night you've never forgotten, is the true beginning of understanding your own psychology. Not the one people assume about you, the one you quietly built inside, piece by piece, from everything you've lived through. The truth is, you didn't stop drinking just because you wanted to be different. You stopped because your mind started noticing things long before you ever said them out loud. Like how one drink made your anxiety worse the next morning, or how the fun everyone talked about never really felt fun to you. Your brain was speaking to you before your mouth ever did, and you finally listened. One of the most powerful things about the human mind is its ability to create patterns for survival. According to a study published in Nature Neuroscience, the brain learns to avoid situations that repeatedly cause discomfort, emotional or physical, even when the person isn't fully aware of the process. And maybe that's what happened to you. Maybe your mind quietly built a protective instinct long before you ever said the words, I don't drink. You didn't quit. Your brain chose safety before you did. But psychology isn't only about avoidance. It's also about identity. You started noticing that the version of you who drinks and the version of you who doesn't feel like two completely different people. One is louder, maybe funnier, maybe easier to accept in a crowd. But the other, the sober one, that's the version of you who actually listens to your own thoughts, who remembers the night clearly, who wakes up the next day without hating yourself for things you barely recall. That version quietly grew stronger until suddenly you couldn't pretend anymore. You didn't want to fit in if it meant abandoning yourself. And then there's the emotional layer, the part you rarely talk about, the part that made you question, why do I even need this to feel comfortable? That's the moment many people never reach, but you did. You felt the discomfort, the awkwardness, the pressure, and instead of numbing it, you studied it. You sat with it until you understood one thing. The discomfort wasn't a sign of weakness. It was a sign of awareness. Another psychological truth is this: people who don't drink often have higher self-regulation, not in a superior way, but in a deeply human way. You learned how to deal with your emotions without outsourcing them to a substance. You learned how to show up as yourself, not a filtered version of you. That takes a strength people rarely see because it's quiet, internal, and not something you brag about. Most importantly, choosing not to drink taught you something about relationships. You began to notice who stayed curious, who respected your choice, and who felt threatened by it. Their reactions didn't tell you anything about you, they told you everything about them. And you learned to stop taking responsibility for other people's discomfort. The psychology behind your decision isn't simple, it's not just a preference, and it's definitely not a trend. It's the whole map of everything you've lived, every mistake, every lesson, every quiet fear you promised yourself you wouldn't repeat. It's the way your brain learned to protect you long before you understood why. And whether you ever say it out loud or keep it quietly to yourself, choosing not to drink is one of the most honest things you've ever done for your own life. And once you understand that truth, truly understand it, you start to see something else. The real story isn't only about what you stop doing, it's about what you're finally becoming. Let's talk about that. There's a strange thing that happens when you decide not to drink. Instead of people simply accepting your choice, society starts building stories around you. Some think you're judging them, some think you're boring, some think you must have a dramatic past, and some don't think anything at all, they just get uncomfortable. because your choice forces them to look at their own habits. But if you've been sober in a room full of drinks, you know one truth. People rarely react to you. They react to the mirror your decision holds up. You've probably had moments when someone said, "Come on, just one," as if your boundaries were negotiable, or as if refusing a drink was the same as rejecting them. What they don't understand is that your choice isn't about pride. It isn't about being better than anyone. It's about protecting the version of yourself that you worked so damn hard to grow into. The irony is, the more quietly you choose sobriety, the more loudly some people seem to take it. And it's not just social pressure, it's cultural programming. For years, movies, ads, and traditions have taught us that alcohol equals fun, connection, freedom. It's everywhere: celebrations, heartbreaks, weekends, first dates, weddings. So when you step outside that narrative, people don't know how to place you. A study from the Journal of Social Issues found that people often feel threatened when someone makes a healthier choice in front of them, not because of the choice itself, but because it forces them to question their own. And that's exactly what happens when you're the only one at the table without a drink. But here's the thing society gets completely wrong. They assume not drinking makes you distant. In reality, it's the opposite. You're actually more present. You remember conversations. You connect without needing something to loosen you. You feel things fully instead of numbing them. You show up as your real self instead of your alcohol version. That's connection in its truest form. The kind people chase without ever realizing the thing they're using to connect is actually pushing them further away from themselves. There's also the misconception that not drinking means you're missing out. But you know better. You've lived both sides. You've seen the nights that start funny and end sad. You've been in groups where everyone laughs loudly but wakes up quietly anxious the next morning. You know the difference between fun in the moment and peace in your life, and you chose the latter, not because it's easy, but because your life feels better when you're conscious inside it. And maybe the biggest misunderstanding of all is this: people think your sobriety is a limitation, but what if it's your freedom? What if choosing to stay sober is the moment you finally stopped performing for the world and started listening to yourself again? What if this decision, the one society judges so quickly, is the exact decision that saved the version of you that you're finally becoming? So let them misunderstand you. Let them joke. Let them assume. Because at the end of the day, you're not responsible for the stories society writes about you. You're responsible for the story you're writing for yourself, one clear choice at a time. There's a moment in every healing journey when you stop trying to prove anything to anyone and quietly start choosing what feels right for you. If you've ever felt guilty for not drinking or awkward for being the one holding a water while everyone else holds a glass, then you already know this moment. It's the moment when you finally ask yourself, why am I trying so hard to fit into a room that doesn't feel good for me? And that question becomes the doorway to a different kind of peace. You might not have noticed it at first, but every time you chose not to drink, a small part of you was trying to protect something inside: your clarity, your health, your control, or simply your sense of who you are. That instinct wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. And the more you listen to it, the more you start to see that sobriety, whether full or partial, was never about alcohol. It was about finally giving yourself permission to feel safe in your own story. What's interesting is that psychology has a name for this: self-congruence, the feeling you get when your choices match your inner truth. A study from the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people with higher self-congruence report more peace, better mental health, and a stronger sense of identity. You've probably felt this already, even if you didn't have a name for it. That quiet relief when you go home early, that clean, light feeling the next morning, that soft satisfaction of knowing you honored yourself instead of the crowd. But here's the part we rarely admit. Choosing peace often means losing places, habits, and even people that used to feel familiar. Not drinking might make some friends drift away. It might make certain environments feel strange. It might even make you question who you are without the noise, the distraction, the pretending. That confusion can feel uncomfortable, but it's also the sign that you're growing. Growth always asks you to leave something behind. As you walk further into this new version of your life, you also start noticing the little things. How your body feels more honest with you, how your thoughts feel clearer, how your evenings slowly become less chaotic and more calm. You begin to enjoy the quiet again. You start caring about mornings instead of nights. You stop needing excuses. You realize you aren't missing out on anything. You're simply stepping into a life that finally makes sense. And the beautiful thing is, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to label yourself. You don't need to justify your choices. You just need to keep choosing what makes you feel whole. Because your healing isn't loud or dramatic. It's soft. It's subtle. It's you learning to trust yourself again. And that's enough. So if you've ever felt out of place for not drinking, remember this. The discomfort wasn't a sign that something was wrong with you. It was a sign that you were outgrowing a version of yourself that wasn't meant to stay. And the peace you're feeling now, that's the life you were always supposed to meet. No matter why you choose not to drink, your story is valid, your pace is enough, and your peace is real. If this video made you feel a little more understood, stay with me. This channel is a place where we learn, heal, and grow together. And if you're comfortable, share your story in the comments. You never know who might need to hear it.